Hello, ghouls, and welcome to Brave the Basement. I'm your host, the Ghoul That Rules.
I'm your co-host, Black One Jack 2.
If you enjoy getting a little scared, ghost stories, haunted houses, a believer in the supernatural, or maybe even a skeptic wanting to look at things from a different perspective, then this is the show for you. Today's episode is sponsored by Ed's Barbershop. Ed's Barbershop is located at 210 Lane Street in North Judson, Indiana. So if you enjoy getting your hair cut from a hometown barber with that old-fashioned feel, then dial 574-896-3344 and schedule your appointment today. Hey, Blackjack, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty good. I just want to say I don't know what today's topic is. And I was saying to myself when we were setting up is like, don't you love when you get to figure out the topic during the show? I mean, isn't that amazing?
Well, that's how I get your genuine reaction. All right, so today's episode, we are going to do the Winchester Mystery House. Have you ever heard of the Winchester Mystery House?
Yes. Actually, you know what? I remember recommending this video. I mean, it was like, 2 seasons ago?
Well, we're on the second season, so it would have been last season.
Oh, last season, I remember recommending this to you. And now we're doing it. I remember you said, I don't want to do it.
I didn't originally, and then because I don't know. Right? You know, the movie came out, and, you know, I like the movie a lot, and I like what they did with the movie, and this is kind of a cliche topic, and then so I tore into it a little bit, and I was like, you know, this is actually really cool, because I love Stephen King movies, and I was a huge fan of Rose Red, and Rose Red, Stephen King wrote it loosely based on the Winchester Mystery House, right down to the reason why Ellen Rimbauer in Rose Red kept building Rose Red, and the reason why Mrs. Winchester kept on building the Winchester Mystery House. So when I really, really dug into it, I was like, you know, this is really cool. So we're just going to go ahead and jump straight in here.
Before we start, is this the same people who owns like the weapons?
Yes.
And their company?
Yes.
All right.
So the Golden State is known for Hollywood glamour, astonishing miles of coastline, and a mysterious peace offering to those whose lives were cut short by the gun that won the West. That is the Winchester Model 1873 repeating rifle. The Winchester House, located in San Jose, California, was purchased by Sarah Winchester when it was just a modest farmhouse. Over the next several decades, she transformed it into a peculiar, spooky, and incredible work of architecture. Sarah Winchester started renovating the property in 1884 and continued nonstop until her death in 1922. For 38 years, the Winchester House underwent dramatic and occasionally bizarre construction. Sarah Winchester was an extremely wealthy widow who inherited $20 million from her husband, William Winchester, heir to the Winchester Repeating Arms Company's fortune. With nearly $500 million by today's standards, plus plenty of company stock, Sarah was able to keep her eccentric mansion under construction renovation for nearly 4 decades. But the story of the mansion isn't all charming, redecorating, and room additions. Sarah and William Winchester endured several tragedies during their brief marriage. Shortly after they were married in 1862, they had a daughter, Annie. She was born in 1866 but lived less than 2 months. 15 years later, when he was in his early 40s, William died suddenly of tuberculosis, leading Sarah to question if the Winchester family was cursed. Allegedly, a desperate Sarah turned to Adam Coons, a prominent psychic of the time. He confirmed what she had long suspected, that the Winchester family was cursed by the legions of people who were killed by the gun that won the West. The only way to save herself, according to Coons, was to endlessly build under a San Jose mansion. She accepted this as her only option, a way to quiet the spirits and save herself from the Winchester family curse. In 1873, the Winchester Repeating Arms Company revolutionized the gun industry with its Model 73, nicknamed the gun that won the West. It was one of the first repeating rifles and could fire with expert precision with very little lag time between shots. As such, the Model 73 was a brand new breed of weapon that claimed the lives of many people around the turn of the century. The Winchesters got rich from the Model 73. Its popularity was unrivaled in the expansion years of the late 1800s. According to legend, the souls who lost their lives at the end of the barrel of the Model 73 haunted Sarah until her death, prompting her to implement extravagant and often confusing renovations. Apparently, Sarah conducted nightly seances with the dead and had her workers carry out their strange construction requests during the following day. Some of the most intriguing features of the Winchester house are those that defy logic. Staircases end abruptly at the ceiling, doors open to nowhere. Rooms are built inside of rooms, doors are built in all shapes and sizes, and skylights have been installed in the floors. The massive mansion spans over 24,000 square feet and contains 160 rooms. And believe it or not, the mansion actually used to be taller and grander. The Winchester house once had nearly 600 rooms and towered 7 stories tall, but it was partially destroyed in 1906 when an earthquake decimated the upper floors. Still, the Winchester house is a wonder to behold, and it's easy to get lost in the seamlessly endless loops of hallways and trick doors. The Winchester house story has even been depicted in pop culture. In 2018, Winchester, a horror movie starring Helen Mirren, glamorized Sarah Winchester's story and family tragedy, with a solid dose of the supernatural thrown in for good measure. An alternative and far less spooky theory about the Winchester house is that Sarah was simply an eccentric philanthropist who kept her workers employed during the economic depression of the late 1800s. According to this theory, her passion for quirky architecture, desire to help others, and expansive fortune culminated in the Winchester house. We may never know the real reason that Sarah Winchester built her unconventional masterpiece, but you can visit for yourself and draw your own conclusions. In a twist befitting of the Winchester house, the street it sits on was actually renamed Winchester Boulevard. The estate is now known as the Winchester Mystery House, and you could take any number of mansion tours on the property. Most tours last an hour and range from $20 to $55. If you have trouble navigating stairs or tight spaces, you can opt for video access tour, a fully immersive experience that allows you to step inside the Winchester Mystery House virtually. Was Sarah Winchester haunted by the victims of the gun that won the West, or simply an eccentric? One thing is for certain, she left behind a lasting relic that defines architectural convention. You will never forget your visit to the sprawling and curious Winchester Mystery House.
I mean, I think it's absolutely amazing. The amount, you know, they're rich when the building is like construction's been over 40 years. All right, you know they're rich,
Which is non-stop.
non-stop.
Well, it said in here that the amount of money that she had is equivalent to $500 million today, so about $500 million. And that didn't include her stock options within the company. And like I said, you know, at the beginning of this episode, that this is where Stephen King drew his inspiration for the movie Rose Red.
Never seen it.
It is fantastic. So in the Rose Red, and then, so there's kind of two movies. There's Rose Red, which was the first movie, and then they did another movie that went more into the backstory of Ellen Rimbauer, and that was called The Diary of Ellen Rimbauer. Both were great movies. Rose Red was actually set up as like a mini series on TV, so it's kind of funny when you watch it on DVD because you could see where the commercials would have been. But either way, Ellen Rimbauer is told that she's got to continuously build the house as well, and like I said, that's where Stephen King kind of drew that inspiration from, was the Winchester Mystery House. Now, if you get into the Winchester, the movie, the Mystery House movie, I don't remember the exact name of the movie at the moment, but they kind of went right with this article that I just read, that Sarah Winchester just kept building it to house the spirits of all the people that died from that very gun.
I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. It's so weird because I saw on YouTube. I remember, I don't know if it was the Sam and Colby channel, their exploration videos, but I remember people going in and seeing some of the rooms. Like there was this room that was weird, and then they had like a little church room, and then they had like the spirit room, and then they had a couple bedrooms.
Yeah, I mean, the whole house, it's really hard to describe just on a podcast. I highly recommend watching a couple YouTube channels where they give some tours of the mystery house. But with all that said, what about all these ghosts? So shouldn't this place just be riddled with ghosts, Blackjack? So let's go ahead and get into a first-hand experience from somebody who visited the Winchester Mystery House. And then I got a couple other extremely short stories on it. And believe it or not, I stumbled across this one, not even looking for it, at the same time I put all the notes together for this episode. So I was like, it's just meant to be. So I found this on Reddit, Winchester Mystery House. Last year in October, my friend and I went to the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose for a night flashlight tour. So they went on a flashlight tour, which meant there was no natural light or even lights turned on inside the house, so you had to do it with your flashlight. For a night flashlight tour, since it was during Halloween season, they were playing a lot of very obviously fake background noises, such as footsteps on the top floor, voices of kids, etc. So my friend and I first were like, oh, how spooky. And we really didn't expect to experience anything. But as soon as we got halfway through the tour of the house, we started noticing that the temperature in certain areas or rooms would drastically change, even though we didn't notice any fans nearby. We still didn't think much of it at this point, and we're just casually looking with our flashlights into the rooms. Now here's where it gets creepy. At some point, we're in this room with a lot of glass doors and windows looking into exhibition rooms that are closed off or locked. There's no one inside here, not even the workers. I was looking straight into this one room that had glass windows surrounding it. I was pointing my flashlight straight, looking around the room, and when I turned to the left, this one small corner that was surrounded by glass, and I'm like 1 foot away from it, when I noticed a dark shadow right behind the glass. The more I stared at it, the more I realized it's like a shadowy face. It was like I was in a trance. I was frozen in place, and though the other side of the glass, this old wrinkly face of a woman was staring right back at me. She looked like she was wearing a black cloth over her head. I could see the wrinkles on the face, and her eyes were just dark and piercing. It was like we were just staring deeply at each other. I can't explain it very well, but it wasn't solid like a regular person. It was dark and almost like a shadow, except a lot more clear. I was only noticed a face, not a body. A few seconds later, I snapped out of it, and I screamed my friend's name and ran towards her. When I told her what happened, we both went back to the place where I saw the face, and we looked around the room to see if there were any workers there, or if there were any projectors around that could have explained what I saw. But the room was empty, and if you've ever been to that house, you know a lot of these random corners and spaces in certain rooms are barely big enough to fit a human. I was shaking so much after that, and my anxiety was getting pretty bad. I just knew what I saw and knew there was no way. It was just my mind playing tricks on me. As we continued the tour, I started looking at the pictures of the house and people back then, and the more you look at the pictures, you notice super creepy and demonic-looking faces in them. That just completely gave me the creeps. Maybe I was just tripping about these photos. I don't know.
So weird. I mean, ghost with the old lady with the mirror. I mean, okay, number one. Why would you go on a tour and in a haunted, in one of the creepiest houses ever built without natural light, or just using flashlights?
Because it would be fun.
No, this is
Yeah.
terrible. That's not fun.
So I'm going to get in a couple really short stories here, Blackjack. This one is called The Hall of Fires. Some employees who worked at the mansion for Mrs. Winchester are said to have stayed on after their deaths. There are footsteps heard shuffling to and from Mrs. Winchester's room. There's an apparition with black hair who is frequently spotted pushing a wheelbarrow. Perhaps that laborer is what a present-day worker encountered in the Hall of Fires, so named for its many fireplaces. Prior to the mansion opening for tours one day, the worker was on a ladder. He felt a tap on his shoulder, turned around, and no one was there. The worker refocused his attention on his task. That's when he felt what seemed like a hand pressing against his back. He was still the only one in the room, but not for long. That worker got out of there fast, leaving the otherworldly laborer alone to handle the job.
Claps for me, claps.
So, and I'll tell you this last little ghost story I got, according here. So, Sarah's sealed room. Now, this one's interesting. If you remember, I said that there were at one point like 7 stories and 600 rooms.
Okay, you gotta know there's probably a trapdoor somewhere.
So, the 1906 earthquake that destroyed San Francisco also caused serious damage to Mrs. Winchester's house. In fact, she was trapped in a room until her workers were able to set her free. Deeply shaken by her experience, Mrs. Winchester had the room sealed. It stayed that way until last year when the room was opened and added to tours. On one of those tours, a guide gathered participants in the room to explain the history and point out the objects found inside more than 100 years after being sealed. The guide heard a loud sigh in the hallway and went outside to bring in the straggler. She didn't find any tourists, but did see a small, ghostly form gliding around the corner. The guide quickly followed. She still didn't see anyone, yet she heard another sigh. Perhaps Mrs. Winchester had used the sealed room as a refuge from tourists.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, when people just walk in on your own home, I mean, it's just one of your average things you do. You lock yourself in your room.
So what's the consensus here, Blackjack? Is the Winchester Mystery House haunted? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what do you think of this psychic? His name was Adam Coons, telling Sarah Winchester that the only way to keep the spirits quiet and calm was to continually build the home. Do you think that he was a quack, or do you think he was the real deal?
I mean, if you think about it, wouldn't they well, it is, if it is a quote-unquote curse, that means only the Winchester family is only affected, but the building, the construction on the actual mansion has stopped. So does that mean the spirits can run wild?
I don't know. That's a very good question. And what about all the extra rooms and the stories that was destroyed in the 1906 earthquake? Was that...
I mean, if I was a ghost and I was living in this hotel, I would be mad if my home got destroyed.
Right?
I mean...
Either way, it is a very fascinating house. I've never been there. I would love to go there. California is a very, 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 very long way away. So if you would like to become a Brave the Basement ghoul, be sure to share this show on social media. Go to bravethebasement.weebly.com and sign up for our newsletter to get all the latest news and updates when each episode has been posted. If you have a ghost story you would like to share, you could reach us at bravethebasement@gmail.com. Your story could make it on the show and be featured on the website. You can also submit your story on Reddit under the subreddit Brave the Basement or in the YouTube comment section. If you have an eerie ghost photo you would like to share, please email us and include a description, and your photo could be added to our photo gallery. And that brings us to the end. We hope that we brought you just a little fright. And remember, when you're up late at night and you hear something in the other room that just doesn't seem right, it's okay if you need to turn on the light to protect yourself from things that go bump in the night. I'm your host, Gould Rules,
I'm your co-host, Black One Jack 2.
and I hope you join us again. Until next time.